Hey guys, welcome back to the Girlfriends and Goals podcast channel. My name is Samaria, and this is my best friend and co-host Miosha. Tonight we're reviewing Married at First Sight season 14, episode 7. But of course, before we do, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Our goal is to hit 1,000 by the end of this season of Married at First Sight. So go ahead and subscribe. It's absolutely free, and we'll be here every Thursday night reviewing the previous night's episode. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. We're gonna start with Katina and Olajuwon because we didn't have much on them actually this episode. I was gonna say I like how I like how excited Olajuwon was to move in. And then later on, how excited he was for his wife to see his house. Like, I like that he got so nervous for her to come and see his face and how he really wanted her to like it. It reminded me of the wedding night when he was like, oh, do you like what you see? Like, he really wants to be liked by her. And so I thought that was really cute. What did you have on those two?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He was very nervous, but I'd say if you're going to ask someone, you should be open to the feedback that they give you. And she didn't even call out anything too crazy. She just wanted to brighten it up a bit, modernize it. She didn't say, oh, it all needs to be gone. She just said, like, oh, just lighten it up, a lighter color.
Yeah.
And those curtains, which I agree.
She was very polite because she could have said worse. He's like, so do you like it? There's not much to like. So I don't know what you expect her to say right now.
Right.
It was interesting when they moved into the apartment. He was like, oh, you have no excuse now. You need, you can cook. It's like, are we back to this? But I was surprised when Pastor Cal did his visit and he was like, by the way, for us, like when he talked to us, that was not a deal breaker. He did not even mention wanting, a person who needed like to cook and all of that stuff. So I thought that was interesting because people really do try to like cabbage patch their way past the experts. And then when they get in these marriages, they want to have all these requirements. So right. I thought that was funny.
And he was even looking shook and pushing back like, no, like this is so important. And I don't want to make it seem like there shouldn't be any expectations or conversations around it.
Yeah.
But the way that he's going about it, it just feels very pushy, not like he's willing to have a conversation. It's not so much even, I guess, what he's saying, it's how he's saying it. So he could say, hey, I like to eat at home for health reasons. How many days a week would you feel comfortable with making a meal? Yeah. Just having a more open-minded conversation and seeing how it would fit into her lifestyle, instead of just assuming she has all this extra time to devote to cooking him his hot meals every day. And then he also said that, oh, well, when I was living by myself, I would just have peanut butter and crackers for breakfast and bread. And I'm just like, well, keep that same energy.
Right. He was like, but now that I have a wife, I can't do that. Why not?
It feels very entitled. And I just don't like how he's not being open-minded to see, okay, where can we meet in the middle and how is this going to work for our lifestyle? Or even saying, hey, well, what did you do before? And she said in her confessional, like, hey, I ate out a lot. So a person going from eating out a lot to being expected to cook all these meals every day, that's a big jump. So maybe there needs to be a transition. Maybe you both need to meal prep. So it's a joint effort.
Yeah.
But at least having an open conversation and not sounding entitled for her to be doing this for you, especially since you didn't mention it to the experts. And maybe if you had, they may have found you someone who has this true passion for cooking, which there are many women who have that. So
yeah, but Katina, he wants her to go from 0 to 100 in literally no time. So he has to be willing to work with her. I don't think it's like a deal breaker. I think they were pretty cute this episode. What did you think about him not wanting to sleep with her? So that was, I think, a surprise to Pastor Cal, was that he's the one who's like wanting to take it a little bit slower. How did you feel about that?
I can say I was slightly surprised, but I think he's very self-conscious about not wanting this to be just surface level and
Yeah.
really trying to go against Isaac and the person that he used to be. And I guess I'm not surprised that he would take this route if he feels like, oh, I've had all my fun. I've tried that. It didn't work.
Yeah.
So now I'm ready to try something different. I could definitely see that. I just agree with Pastor Cal. Like, you need to be communicating this to her so that she doesn't think that there's something wrong with her.
Yeah, I definitely respect it. I think we can say a lot about Olajuwon, and we have said a lot about him, but I think he's the reason why like people watch this show. Like, you want to see people who are coming in and they're not perfect, you know, like he's far from it, but we can see how into her he is, how like committed he is to the process. And I think, you know, that is at least respectable. I mean, might say some things that have us giving him the side eye, but what we can't say is that he's not committed to this process. He's not committed to being the type of husband that Katina wants, because even in like past episodes, when they've had conversations off camera and he comes back kind of like, oh yeah, I have to consider what she's saying. And, you know, like he's taking her feedback well. So I am actually here for him. He has to be willing to grow with her. And I think he is willing to like grow and be better. So I'm excited for where they will go. And I think they're what this show is like made for.
Yeah, I just want him to use some of that same energy when it comes to this cooking thing. Okay.
I know. Yeah. They're gonna have to figure that out very soon. But yeah, I like them a lot. So next, I think I want to go to Steve and Noi. So as I think I don't want to say they had a whole lot this episode, but I think they had some like key moments that are worth talking about.
Listen, I just kept thinking, girl, do you want a dog or do you want a man?
A husband, right?
I understand people love their pets. They're like children to them.
Yeah.
But I think you have to meet your spouse where they are. If they're a person who didn't have animals and then they're open to being with you and living with an animal, that's already a big step. Expecting to sleep in the bed with an animal, girl, you tried it. And I'm with Steve. If he has all these dog beds and this and that, I mean, why not meet him in the middle on this?
Yeah.
It's a bit much asking or expecting him to want to sleep in the bed with a dog that he's not familiar with. So I just kept saying like, girl, do you want a husband or a dog?
Yeah, I think one thing we saw from Noi this episode was that she has to be open to like giving and taking. And I feel like she's not. So there was the dog situation. And then of course there's like the 3 kids situation, which I have a cousin who wanted 5 kids and only has 3. So like, I think once you're in it, things do change. But I think she's just like naively not thinking about that type of stuff. But with the dog thing, like I am Steve. If I met someone who had a dog, I would be so uncomfortable because I don't really like pets in my space. But I definitely don't like pets in I don't even like people in their outside clothes sitting on my bed. Like, so I definitely do not want an animal in my bed when I'm sleeping at night. Like that's, and then on the pillow, I don't know, it was just too much. And she has to let that dog use the dog bed. It's like, he was so willing to compromise. He was like, you know, we'll see. And I'm not really comfortable picking up after a dog. I've tried it before with my brother's dog. It didn't really work, but we'll see. So I think he's really trying. And like I said, I need her to like come up off that just a little bit.
Yeah. And I think I saw somewhere online where people were saying that the experts going forward should take into considerations people's feelings on pets.
Yeah.
Whether it's allergies or you just don't like them, or like, what are your boundaries around pets? Because if a person feels like, oh, this dog is like my child, they can really take offense to you not wanting them to be as intertwined in your life and the responsibilities you will probably have to take on as well, like letting the dog outside, feeding the dog.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't a part of your lifestyle before. And Steve really did take it like a champ. Girl.
That has come up like in the last, so I'm not surprised that people are saying that online, because it's come up in the last couple of seasons. So last season, there was Merla and Gil, where she wasn't really like a fan of dogs, and he had a big dog who like drooled a lot named Hype, and she got used to it, thankfully. But then like 2 seasons ago, when they were in Atlanta, there was this couple where both of them had dogs, but the guy felt like his dog was more well behaved than her dog. And so he's like, oh, I need to train this dog and I need to do this. But when the experts met with him, Dr. Pepper was like, why do you feel like you have to be this dog's dad? Like he really was doing a lot. It's like, yeah, my dog doesn't bark, or, when I take my dog outside, my dog behaves this way. And she's like, it's a dog. Like, relax. So I'm not surprised that people are online saying, they need to take this into account, because it also comes up with Mark and Lindsey and their cats as well, where he feels like her cats hiss and his don't, like he got the bougie cats or whatever. But yeah, I definitely am Steve, and that would be something that would terrify me a little bit, like trying to have the dog in the bed. I would not like that. Sushi is cute, but Sushi cannot be in the bed, okay, at all.
But I was going to
talk about the job situation.
I was going to circle back to the kids piece.
Okay.
And just say that I can kind of understand Noi's perspective, because I think most people, if you've never had a child or attempted to go through that process, you don't maybe realize the different barriers or situations that would come up. That when Steve was giving his perspective, and I don't want to say pushing back, just giving a different perspective, he called out very practical reasons to think about, like, hey, you may want what you want, but these are very real concerns that we have to think about in the future. And so I'm just glad that he was able to bring that perspective, instead of just being like, no, I only want 2 kids. It's like, no, these certain needs or things are something that you would think about. However, most people, if you've never gone through that process, you're not thinking that. You're just assuming the best, as you should. But then once you get in it, that's where things may change.
Yeah, and she's so cute, naive, but so cute with her reasons. Like, well, everybody in my family has 3 kids, so, and I've seen that dynamic work really well, so I have to have 3 kids. I was like, no, like it's almost like I always be like, girl, are you like 18? When you're younger and you're like having these lofty dreams, but she's like 33 or something like that. So, but I think she's adorable. And of course, I don't think this is like a deal breaker or anything. I think it's just something where, like Steve said, once they start having kids, then, this will work itself out. It's not a big deal. What I think is a bigger
girl, you
deal,
could get through one pregnancy and be like, okay, I only feel like I got one more in me. She might be the one.
She could be the one to decide. Exactly. Exactly. But obviously I want to get to the job situation. I want to hear your take on it. And then I'll say what I think.
Yeah, so it seems like Steve does have at least a short-term plan in terms of having income. He still has his apartment with the lights. So he has a place to lay his head and for her to kind of scope out. So that's good. He's consulting. So it seems like he has a short-term plan, but he's not sure what he wants to do long-term. I can see how that would be concerning for Noi, given the way that she grew up, her life experiences, and so much about finances and education and jobs is shaped by your childhood and kind of what you've been through. And that's kind of the lens that you'll see it through. So I understand her perspective. However, Steve did say, okay, now that I'll be taking on, a wife, potentially children, it may make more sense for me to be in something more permanent, but I'm not sure if that's the best route for me from like a creative side.
Mm-hmm.
So what I took from that is he knows that he may need to do something more stable if he
Mm-hmm.
has a family, but he doesn't know if that will help him, I guess, in terms of his passion.
Yeah.
But I would just want him to figure that out sooner rather than later and somewhat getting on the same page as her, to
Yeah.
alleviate confusion and concern.
You know, this issue, like I just spoke to my heart. I think both of them have very valid perspectives. So when it comes to Noi, like you said, the way that she grew up definitely plays a huge role in what it is that she wants. Like she needs like security. She needs, at least from what she said, she needs that like consistent income. And
Mm-hmm.
from Steve's perspective, which this was the first time we've heard Steve really talk about it. And so I'm glad that he said things finally, or that the producers allowed us to see the things that he was saying, because I feel him 1,000%. I think he's in a place where it's like going to a job and being there for this many hours a day. While yes, I understand it's a steady paycheck, but when that's not what you want to do, it literally chips away at you as a person. It can like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like suck all the energy out of it. It's draining to do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And so for him to like provide that perspective of, I still make money doing these things. I have like several talents that can earn me money. It might be, you know, more money this month than next month, but I'd rather be doing that because it's draining. Like I understand. And I hope this is something where they can meet in the middle, because
Mm-hmm.
if I were Noy, I would be like really listening into, this man is saying this stuff is gonna drain him. And he's lived that life and he's not an irresponsible person from what we can see. So if like push came to shove and he needed to do something more steady, he would. But
Mm-hmm.
for right now, like I don't know, kind of pushing him to go into a job situation that's draining, I'm not even in support of. And, you know, I was, because he wasn't talking about it, and because his family was like, oh no, he needs a job. I'm like, is he just not trying to get a job? Is he making money freelancing? What is going on? But now I think I get it.
Yeah, I could see that. I will say the challenging part is that she hasn't been with him during
Mm-hmm.
the time where he's had this stable job
Yeah.
to kind of see his track record. So this is where I think him opening up
Mm.
and communicating to her, like, hey, I worked at this company for so many years, just telling her more about, I guess, his full financial situation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if he's freelancing, that could easily make as just as much, if not more,
Mm-hmm.
than working a traditional job. So I think just giving her more information may ease her mind. But because she maybe doesn't know, I think that that is making it hard for her to maybe accept that route,
Mm.
just because it is non-traditional. So, you know, when you don't have as much information, you're already like, I don't know about this. And then when you're taking the non-traditional route, you're even more like, okay, I know what I know for sure. And then when you introduce the element of children, that kind of adds on an entirely different layer,
Mm-hmm.
because you freelancing and doing this and doing that as an individual, even just a married couple with no children, that shifts when you do have children, just because your responsibilities do increase. So just making sure that you can support that, even from like a basic standpoint, like health insurance.
Yeah, but I will say, it could come in handy, like especially if he has more flexibility with his schedule once they do have kids. If he's willing to like, oh hey, I'll take care of the kids during this time. Like there could be some benefits to that, but I think yeah, they would just have to work it out. It's kind of hard too because it's been what, like 14 days or so, or 11 days or whatever. So it's like, okay, maybe he hasn't opened up 100%, but it's been 11 days, but she needs that. So yeah, I hope they seem to be a mature enough couple, and he seems to be a mature enough man to where they can figure that out. And I hope they do. Like, I hope, and it seems like, even though it's something that concerns her, it does seem like she's been going along with it. So I don't know, like, if it's a concern tomorrow, or if she's like just thinking, hey, in the future, like when the kids come. So I'd be interested to see how they fare. But yeah, I understood him more this episode than any other episode, and I completely get where he's coming from with, you know, jobs being kind of draining. Like, there are people who kind of thrive in the, okay, I want a steady job, I want a steady paycheck. And then there are people who thrive outside of that. So I think he might be coming to terms with the fact that he'd prefer to thrive outside of that, as opposed to in it. So yeah, hopefully they figure it out. But I still like them. I loved Pastor Cal and his like perspective and how he like helped them see, you know, each other's point. And I think Steve is the person who will make his wife feel like secure and safe and all of that. We've said it so many times about him. So I feel good about them.
I think also this just shows through, I guess, their personalities. Like, he's more adventurous, willing to take risk. And she seems not as adventurous as she described herself to be, and risk adverse. So yeah, we shall see.
Yeah. And maybe he was like her younger, but now he's just like different. You know, people change. So maybe she's seeing a change, like him at a changing point in his life. Who knows, child, but hoping for the best for them. Next, I think we should do Jasmina and Michael. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So at the beginning of this episode, she's not moving in, and she tells him it's because she needs to figure out her dog daycare situation. And he's like, you know, I think that's not the best way to start. He doesn't take it too harsh, but he does mention, hey, I don't think that's the best way to start a marriage. And she's like, I mean, I have to figure out the dog daycare situation. So like, if it wasn't for that, I would move. But then in her confessional, she said, I told him it was the daycare situation, but really I just needed to like reset and come to him for a fresh start. So I'm like, which one is it, Jasmina? Like, obviously it's that she wanted some time away from him. Like,
and I'd like to add that she kind of lied through omission. So keep that point.
He did too at some point. Like, see,
that's what I'm saying. Just keep that in mind.
The thing is, like, with those two, I feel like they're just wrong and wronger. Like, nobody is ever in the right with them. Like, they just both wrong at all times. One might be like wrong to a lesser degree, but they're just always both of them wrong.
Yeah. And my whole thing is, and this is where I feel like she's giving somewhat Alyssa vibes, is that you had the opportunity. So let's just focus on her and not letting him know why she's going home, in addition to the dog, which, by the way, girl, you knew this was coming up. You been had a dog, but okay. But yeah, like, you could have been open with him to say, hey, I'm still feeling a type of way, because we can all tell.
It's not a secret, ma'am.
You know, so like, hey, I just need some space because I'm still in this, but I want to give it a fair chance. I just need a night or two.
Yeah.
And I think Michael may have still expressed like, hey, I don't think that's the best idea, but I can get with it. I understand. I don't think he would have blown up or been angry or anything. But yeah, I think she should have been open and honest, because he's going to see this and it plays back. So, like, girl.
He is going to see it back. But it's just, the female roommate thing, that's why I said they're just wrong and wronger, because you really could have said it. Like, it really wasn't a big deal for him to hide it or to like omit it. And I understand what she's saying, like, oh, I mentioned that I live with a man several times, and you could have been like, oh, I live with a man too. And even in that like conversation that we saw them having, she's like, oh yeah, I've lived with a man before. I live with one right now, but it's just like, you know, a platonic situation. Like there, he had ample opportunity, is what I'm saying, to express that. His roommates, plural, both of them were female.
So I'll say this. Yes, he should have told her.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not at the wedding, because I don't know if he was nervous or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the wedding aside, from when she mentioned like, oh, my roommate is here. After that, of what I've seen of Jasmina and how she responds to him in different situations, how she's not as forgiving, while I do not agree with him omitting or lying through omission,
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why he did not bring it up. I can understand why, because I feel like when he either is honest about something, admits faults, she uses information, whether it's from his sister, himself, whatever, she uses that and she holds on to it tight.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that she realizes that in her responding the way that she did, even the scene when they were on the honeymoon and he was like writing on the rock, their like names, just how she was just, I can see why he just said, you know what, I'm maybe already in the hole. I'm already on thin ice. I'm just not going to say anything. She's already kind of giving me cold energy. So I'm not going to add to this. And I don't know, just from his point of view, like, what would it help if she's already having a hard time, like really moving past things that they've already talked about? Even though I completely agree. He should have said something and he looked real silly. Like, you should have, like, can you imagine her standing there and seeing this woman?
Well,
who the heck is this? Like, so I feel for her.
Yeah.
However, you know, sometimes you do have to be mindful about how you're responding to people so that they're not scared or taking the route of least resistance in dealing with you based off of how you're going to respond. But he was still silly.
Yeah, I think he could have said something. But I do see what you're saying. Like, she's like, it wasn't even a big deal, but maybe he didn't know that. From his perspective, every other small thing has been a big deal, so let me just not. But also, you're a grown man. This is not your mom. This is, you know, a woman who you're dealing with romantically, maybe, and you need to like be able to state these things, no matter what the feedback might be. This isn't like Mark the Shark and Lindsey, where he's like, if I say anything, she's about to blow up on me. But I see that he probably has that in his head, like has that image of her, like, if I say this, she will hold it against me, because she has. And later on in the episode, she did again. So,
and I will say that he said he had not seen her smile since the wedding day. So even before they had kind of got into it, I guess, on the honeymoon, she hadn't really been smiling or maybe giving him the most welcoming, comforting energy. And so I'm also going to put this out there. I don't know that she's really all that into him.
I agree.
And I think he may be feeling it. And so just as a, I don't even want to say defense mechanism, but to not add on to it, he's like, ooh, I don't want to say anything that's going to make her even more not into me.
Walking on eggshells.
Like aside from them like getting into it, I don't think she's showing him like, hey, I'm into you. She was more cackly when Olajuwon was telling his stories. Just my opinion. Like, I just don't know that she's that into him. And I think he's feeling it.
He probably is. And I agree. I don't think she's that into him. I think if there was any chance of her being into him, whatever his family members have said or whatever, that's another thing. Like, whenever he's been vulnerable with her, like we see later on, it's like being held against him. And I'm glad that he spoke to that. And I enjoyed their meeting with Pastor Cal because somebody said Pastor Cal is earning every bit of his paycheck this episode because
Listen.
he was in there like calling stuff out that we've been seeing. So he did his job. Go ahead, Pastor Cal. But I love that they had that moment with him where he's like, of course, like Michael, you have to handle her with care. So when you're talking at her, she's taking like a lot of offense to that. She's feeling like you're coming at her aggressively, even if you're not yelling, because that was a whole debate. And I don't like how Jasmina handled that. Or she was like, now, Michael, what we're not going to do is, it was giving like condescending a little bit, like, I'm your mom.
Or what was it?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like how she handled it, but I like that he pushed through that to say, hey, you can say I talked to you a certain way. You can say I had a tone, but I wasn't yelling. Because honestly, going into this episode, I'm like, I wish we could catch some of this footage because I want to see how he's talking to her. Because I know for me, that whole like yelling and aggressive energy is a no as well. So if he's doing that, then I'm with Jasmina. And I haven't been with my good sis Jasmina since the wedding, but if that's the type of energy he's coming with, then I can't be for it. So I'm glad that he stuck with it and cleared it up.
I'm going to say this. I would be very surprised if Michael was super rah with her off camera and then able to flip it and be cool as a cucumber when the cameras are rolling. I'd be shocked by that. And even in that interaction that they had with Pastor Cal, I feel like her energy was more condescending and more like amped than he was. He was just kind of looking like bewildered. Like, now either this dude is like a grade A actor, and just giving his background, and I'm not saying that I know him, or I'm just going based off of what I see. He lost his parents at a very young age, raised mostly with his sisters. So he's used to being around a lot of women. I just think that it requires like a very high level of just like emotional manipulation to be able to do that. And that is not the vibe that I've gotten from him so far, only because of how willing he's able to be like, you know what, I was wrong. Or you know what, I'm going to try to do this better. I've yet to hear Jasmina really say anything about her personality that could use tweaking, or maybe I did say it wrong, or really anything. So it's his background, it's what I've seen of him on camera, and the fact that he's been very willing to take accountability and be like, you know what, I could do XYZ better going forward.
Yeah,
who knows? Really I could be reading him completely wrong, and he's like a psycho. I don't know.
You're right. We'll know in the next few weeks, because I think sometimes they keep like cameras in the house. So I'm really curious to see how the next few weeks pan out. Because I want to see what it is that she's talking about. But I do think it's a mixture of her not being as into him, and what the family said, his imperfections on the honeymoon, which you have imperfections. So I don't think it's realistic to not expect him to show his at some point. But yeah, I from what I see, maybe it is a tone thing, but I like that Pastor Cal is like, when those moments happen, you need to understand, like, you can't talk at her. And that's what she's uncomfortable with. Like she was clearly uncomfortable with the way he's talking to her. So something there absolutely needs to change. But I like that Pastor Cal's like, and when he says whatever, or when he's doing this, say, I'm not your enemy. Because it does seem like he feels like he has to defend himself in a few ways. Like, so I think the way she presents, or the way that their interactions are, she might seem like an enemy in those moments. So I think she needs to remember, I'm not his enemy. And I think maybe he needs
yeah.
to. Yeah. I think mostly her. I think mostly she needs to know that she's not his enemy.
Yes, and give some comforting energy even when he is being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then when Pastor Kyle said, are you willing to forgive? And I wrote down, I am not convinced so far that Jasmina is able to go through these speed bumps and then actually forgive and move on. It seems like she will hold on to things for a while, and then something super small could happen, or you have a disagreement and she's like, oh, you're talking whatever kind of way to me. It's like, no, we're just having a disagreement.
Yeah. And I like that he brought up, hey, I said that this is something that I could do better. And because I said that, now that's what's on the front of her mind. Like, that's all that she can see. It's like if somebody says, oh, I need to work out more, and now they see me, like today I'm lounging around eating a sandwich, and they're like, oh, see, you're lazy, you don't work out, you said you would work out more. It's like, okay, girl, it's been one day, or in their case, it's been 11 days. Like, yeah, this is something that I want to improve on, but that doesn't mean you now like put that lens on and view me through those eyes all the time, because that's not fit. That's too much pressure to be under somebody's scrutiny that way. So yeah, I go ahead.
And I wonder, what exactly is Jasmina expecting or like looking for? Because we all have imperfections, things that we need to work on. Yeah. And when you get married, it is like a mirror. So, I mean, those things, they come to the surface because you're interacting so closely with someone every single day. So I would just want to know exactly, what is she expecting of him? Is she expecting for him to be perfect? And that's not an option. Or is she really willing to work with someone and say, hey, I'm going to try to be better on these things? And is she willing to improve or even acknowledge the things that she could be better at? Yeah. Because I will say, I kind of wish Pastor Kyle would have, because he's seen the footage too. Mm-hmm. I wish that he would have called her out a bit more on her holding on to things. I wish that they would have dug deeper on that instead of just asking her like, oh, are you able to forgive? Like, no, like open up the conversation to say, hey, I noticed these things on the honeymoon and you not moving forward. It's been days now. Yeah. Is there something else?
Yeah. And maybe they did and we didn't see it, but I do agree, like based on what we saw, they could have gone a little deeper. One of the things I wrote down was like, in response to the whole, I'm not your enemy, I'm like, but can she actually say that honestly? Like, can she say, oh, I'm not your enemy? Or does she see herself in those moments as his enemy or see him as an enemy? Like, can she honestly say those words? But yeah, I do think, I don't know, relationships are hard. And then, you add this on, marrying a stranger and having to figure stuff out. So I know it's difficult, but she really does have to like come to a place where every mistake that he makes isn't held against her. It seems like she sees herself, she's not seeing herself clearly. Like, she thinks I've done nothing wrong. Or I'm not doing anything to contribute to the downfall. It's all him. So I just want her to like see herself more clearly. I don't think she's there yet.
Based off the way she was looking this episode, the different facial expressions, I don't know. I think she may see herself as his enemy, not like outright. Yeah. But I don't know if it's the editing or what, but yeah. Jasmina girl, it's not looking good.
It's not, and that'll be their downfall, because he's gonna make mistakes again. Like, he's gonna do something silly, and you have to be willing to forgive him. The previews for next week, they look friendly, but I wonder how long that's gonna last. And then when he slips up again, how long is that gonna last? Like, I don't know. I don't see them working out. And I keep thinking, oh, she's friends with Alyssa. So, I think there's a little bit of that energy, a lot of bit of that energy there. So I don't like it. We'll see next week. Yeah. All right. So I guess we're at Mark and Lindsey, and then Chris and Alyssa. Those are the two we have left.
Mm-hmm.
We can end on Chris and Alyssa since the episode ended on Chris and Alyssa. But so Mark and Lindsey.
Mark the shark.
Mark the shark. So from the beginning, like they went to his house in the hazmat suits. I'm like, dang, this is a serious situation, huh?
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
But Lindsey was like, ride or die, we're in this. And I applaud that, but I don't applaud. The thing with Lindsey is like every time I'm like, yes, Lindsey, in this episode, I was like, no, Lindsey, no. But what I cannot applaud is her kind of going in there and taking over. This is still this man's space. These are still his things. These things have like sentimental value to him. You can't be like, okay, yeah, well, we're going to throw this out. You're still new here. Like you're still new in his life. And now you're new to his apartment or house or whatever it is that he lives in. So I don't like that. She did too much, honestly. And it's Lindsey. She is too much, but she did too much with that.
Girl, she walked in there thinking she was Marie Kondo. Does it bring you joy?
That's exactly how she was, right?
Like questioning me. And it's such a stressful situation as is. And so yeah, she needs to reel it back in and find that balance of being helpful, but not overbearing and controlling. Like it's still his life and you just got here. Mm-hmm. And if you're not careful, I don't know, you could end up pushing him away in a situation where you're trying to help.
Yes, like when your support isn't supportive. Like I know you're trying to offer him support and you feel like just by being there you're doing that, but it takes more than that. It takes, okay, maybe let him lead the way and say, okay, these are the things that this is what I want you to do, Lindsey. You do this and then you do it, because you can't support him the way you think he needs to be supported. You have to support him the way he wants to be supported. And I think that was the disconnect there.
Yeah, even he said like, I don't want my stuff in trash bags, like something as simple as that. Yeah. Where it seems small, but if you're a very organized person, your stuff is already disheveled, like there could have been a better way for her to help.
Absolutely. And then wow, so I wrote down too many cats. So many cats.
Lord have mercy.
Oh, interestingly, I'm like, Mark had a lot to say for somebody, like about her apartment. He had a lot to say for somebody who didn't have nowhere to go after this process. he was like, I was hoping her space would be a little more day, a little more this, a little more that. Like, Mark, you
got bed bugs, bro.
Your house is infested. Stop.
like come on, her space. He kept saying like, oh, it's so Lindsey. It's so, yeah, because she lives there. It's her space. It's her girl pad.
What do you want to be?
It wasn't supposed to be for you. Come on now.
Oh man. Yeah, that's hilarious. It is interesting, like just with the other men, how their homes just need a feminine touch. Like you could tell, like everybody's home needed a little something here or there, I'm glad they have women in their lives now. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the conversation with Pastor Cal, this is where things got interesting. So they were fighting before it, and I was actually really proud of Lindsey for being like, I need some space right now. Like, you can walk away, because she really articulated what she was feeling well. I thought she's like, I feel I've got two versions of you and it's not working for me. I don't know where I stand with you. So I was really proud of her and how she communicated. And I tweeted that, and she made me regret it later. Like I literally had to go underneath it and be like, I spoke too soon. But yeah, I did appreciate that she was clear about where she stood and needing space. And, she didn't directly go into like insulting him in the way that she did on the honeymoon. So I'm trying to give my girl Lindsey some stuff. I've seen some improvements in her. She went outside to her meditation, whatever. But then they spoke with Pastor Cal. So what did you think about that whole like conversation or before?
Well, before that, where she was calling out to him that she thinks because of this stressful situation, it's causing a change in his personality or what she's seen of him, which I think is relatable, because even if you have been with someone for a while, you know, there's always like that first time where you see someone go through something really stressful and you're like, oh, this is how you handle stress. But for them, it's amplified because they literally just got together. So, you know, I'm glad that she was able to kind of call it out in a calm way. To say, hey, these are the changes that I'm noticing. And it felt like Mark wasn't very receptive to it in the moment. He just wasn't seeing it. And, you know, I don't know when his last relationship was. He didn't even say, well, this is how I handle stress or really anything. He just didn't receive it very well. But I appreciate how she was able to observe that, call it out to him. But what I didn't like, and I think this happened before Pastor Kyle got there, where she was calling out the red flags. Like, hey, I'm noticing this change. But instead of him being like, okay, I agree or disagree or just continuing on the conversation, he says, oh, well, I'm noticing these red flags in you too. And I will say that's not the best way probably to handle, you know, that type of situation with a spouse. It's like, you can't use when they bring up valid concerns as an opportunity to call them out on what they're doing. You should just address what they're talking about first. And then maybe after that conversation, say, hey, well, since we're already talking about it, and tone matters. You know, you don't want to make it seem like you're going tit for tat. And that was what it was giving me, because it's like, okay, Mark, if you were feeling this, why did you wait until that moment to call it out to her?
But also, we now know why.
And we know why.
But I will say I don't want to say in his defense, because I understand Lindsey does feel like she's getting those like mixed signals, because she is, quite honestly, she is getting mixed signals because he is like pulling back. But I will say in his defense, like, this whole moving in and getting married situation is stressful. Having cameras following you around all the time is stressful. Having a filming schedule. And then on top of that, like outside of that whole filming schedule, production, all of this stuff, you have the situation at home going on. So he's dealing with two high stress situations. So
right. And she doesn't know him like that. So I think it's okay for her to call it out and just say, hey, I'm just like noticing these things about you. And it's kind of unfair that like the timing is really bad for them, because most people, you know, you kind of have some time before like a big life shift or event happens. But this is just happening to them right out of the gate. So the timing is just really bad. And I feel for them in that, because yes, it is him pulling back, but I also do think that he could be handling stress in a way that she's just not here for.
I think it seems to me like she expects him to be normal when this is not normal. Like, this is not a normal situation. So she has to cut him some slack. But I also, just based on things that were said later on, like when they sat down with Pastor Cal, I do think there was like a lack of transparency on his side. So I like that Pastor Cal was like, I think you're afraid. So she sits down and she's like expressing herself again, which I think is good. She's like, I'm very like frustrated about this because XYZ, valid. But Pastor Cal said, I think you're afraid. And Mark was like, afraid of what? I was tuned. I was like, yeah, afraid of what? Like, where is this going? Because Pastor Cal had been on point for all the episodes. I'm like, oh, where is this going? He's like, it seems like you're afraid to express yourself. And I get it. Like, he's scared like that when he says things to her, she's going to go off. And honestly, she showed why he should be afraid with her response in that moment, but also previously. Like, he's seen her go off and like act a certain way in these situations. So that, to me, I would be scared too. I would shrivel up into a little ball and not express myself because of how I've seen her respond in other situations in the last 11 days.
And I think the experts were probably thinking, because she's a lot and he's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they anticipated maybe Mark kind of being in that retreat position when you have two just a lot people. You're just like, oh, y'all will just be
a lot
together. Because even Pastor Cal said, like, hey, like we knew we needed to find the person that was on your same energy level and wavelength. Yeah. But I don't think that they anticipated Mark being as shook as he is.
And when she responded, I think I took a screenshot of Pastor Cal's face, because when she responded, was like, I feel like I haven't given him a reason to feel that way. And Pastor Cal was like, girl, what? And I tried to write it down. I didn't get it verbatim, but he said something like, you wear no filter as a badge of honor, but you can't do that in this situation. Like, you have to have a filter. And so he's like, we knew you guys were a lot, but you have to learn how to like tailor it to your partner. And it's not so much of, oh, now I have to like change myself. I mean, it kind of is, but you do have to like, what did Pastor Cal say? Give it to him in doses. It's like, slow it down on this poor guy. Like, you can't give him 1,000% in like 10 seconds. You gotta, divide it up, maybe 100 at a time, maybe.
And not even divide it up, but some things just don't even need to be said because it can be abusive language. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. You can't call people names and just say whatever. And this is your spouse. This isn't some random person you got into it with road rage on the street. You should be handling their heart with care every single day. Use a
filter. Yes, exactly. If there's one place where a filter is required, it's this type of relationship. So yeah, I did not like how she responded, because I feel like she invalidated what he was feeling. And I don't think that was fair, especially seeing how much it took for him to get to that point. Like, this man's like crying and saying like, I don't feel like I can express anything to you. And she's just like, I don't think you should feel that way. You have no reason to feel that way. Like, come on, Lindsey, really?
Girl, your daddy outed you episodes ago.
Pastor Kyle's like, listen, you're a lot, okay? Let's be honest. You do too much, okay?
This man is like, sitting up here like he literally can't breathe.
Yes.
And when they were showing the clips of her being like, oh, well, you need to have this kind of water bottle and you need to be doing this and you need to be doing that. It's like, girl, you need to calm down on that controlling energy. He's an adult. He had a full life before you. If he doesn't want to be green, that's his business.
Yes.
If he don't want to recycle, let it be. Like, you can't control. Leave him and his goldfish alone.
And this is one of the things that I appreciate about Katina, because like everything is not an issue. The things that are, we can already tell she's pulling him to the side and being like, I don't really like that. Don't do that no more. Like, and I think, even though like when we first started out this season, we're like, they're both kind of immature. They don't even know each other's names. They're both partiers and now they're together. But I think there is a level of maturity that she constantly or consistently demonstrates that I think other people could learn from in this season.
Yeah, like, girl, he's not your child.
Exactly.
Like, calm down, just observe.
Yeah.
And then you could be like, oh, have you thought of this? Would you be interested in that?
Yeah.
And that's where I don't know. It's frustrating to watch because it's like you don't want a person to feel like they're suffocating in a marriage and like they just stepped back to being 12 years old just because they're with you now. Yeah. And you know everything. You do everything right.
Yeah. Like, you're not there to fix his life. You're there to learn. First of all, you're there to learn what his life is like. And then if there are
Yes.
things that don't work for you, then you guys can come together and decide, okay, this is how we would like to move forward. But yeah, you're not there to recreate this man's life. Like, he's been living for 30 something years, girl. Like, you're not about to change anything.
And then the last thing that I wrote is something that I hope Lindsey thinks about going forward
Mhm.
is, you know, when you're a lot, when you are in a situation when you actually have done no wrong, and when you have very valid concerns, your spouse and other people may not be as likely to take your concerns serious
Mm.
because you've been doing too much.
The boy who cried wolf.
And I just hope she can keep that in mind going forward, because in that moment, like what she was calling out to Mark was valid. Yeah, you're in a stressful situation. It really shouldn't have warranted him to respond the way that it did, but
Mhm.
I'm not surprised given how much she is. So I just hope she can keep that in mind. Like, girl, pick it wisely, give it in doses, if not at all.
It doesn't think like she is, because the previews for next week do not look pretty, but
Ooh,
it seems like
Lord.
they fight in front of everybody or something like that. And she already like, oh, I hope you find somewhere else to stay tonight, girl. First of all, neither one of y'all is paying for this apartment that this TV show has put y'all in. So how you gonna kick this man out of a house that you're not paying for? But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting episode. Did we do everybody? So we're just at Chris and Alyssa now.
Yeah, the decision.
I am so happy with how this ended. Like,
Listen.
when I tell you my soul was singing, like, because I feel like when I've watched other seasons, this is how we've wanted some other people in the past to respond to
Mhm.
situations that they were in, and we were never getting it. Um, but Christopher Collette, he gave us
Listen.
he gave us what needed to be given. Okay. So I want to start with Alyssa meeting with her mom because you know what was interesting? Her mom was like, I thought he was cute. I thought he was a really nice guy. Her mom is so positive. And Alyssa goes, yeah, but you haven't seen the way he treats me though. And I was like, but
But
we
she
have.
but she will when this airs.
Right. Like, he hasn't even gotten close to you to treat you like anything. Like, let's be real.
Just a liar.
Exactly. And then she mentioned, yeah, like when he said defund the police on his Instagram. Here's the thing. So she said he said defund the police on his Instagram, which his best friend is a police officer. So obviously there's more thought that went into that than not. And it's not something that it seems like she brought to his attention. So it's just another thing that she was like, oh, I see this now, I'm going to take it and run with it. It's not something that she had discussed with him at all. She hadn't shared her perspective with him. So he probably has no idea that this is something that, has like caused her to turn away from him, which it doesn't take much because it's her. But he has no idea that this is something. And I wish she would. I don't even wish it anymore, honestly. I was gonna say I wish she would have given him the chance to explain or like had a conversation with him, but she doesn't deserve a conversation with him about anything at this point.
All it did was show her hand and that she was fishing and grasping for straws. That's all it did. So I am kind of glad that she did do that, and that she showed her hand and how she really is, and just her level of maturity and not understanding that people put all kinds of stuff on social media. People have this view one day, this view the next day. If you didn't give it a conversation, then why are you even bringing it up?
I will say though, just as a viewer who has been Team Chris this whole time, seeing that, because they've like shared pictures of him in like "Stop Killing Black People" shirts, Black Lives Matter type like shirts and stuff like that. I'm really happy that I've been Team Chris this whole time. like I think it's just like the icing on the cake. Like, we've supported this man and obviously talked about how horribly he's been treated, but to see like the types of issues that he cares about, obviously are some that I am, very concerned about and I care about. So yeah, I was like, oh, this is like that was the perfect ending for him and Alyssa, but also like just seeing the types of causes that he stands up for. So yeah, I wasn't mad at it at all.
Yeah, she actually did him a favor from like a viewer's perspective. Like, girl, that didn't hurt him. It helped.
Exactly. And like when she and her mom were saying that she wanted a cowboy, I'm like,
girl, move to Dallas.
Okay, in Massachusetts, you want a cowboy? So yeah, that was really interesting. But the conversation that they had with Pastor Cal, first of all, I want to say I'm glad that he moved to the apartment. And when she came in, he was like, "Oh, welcome." He welcomed her into his place, and I love that for him. He's like, "I don't know about you, but I'm moving in," and so he did what he came to do. He welcomed her into his space, and I thought that was like a perfect. I enjoyed watching that. But then they sat down with Pastor Cal, and she starts with like the excuses. She talks about how she doesn't want to move in because they both have like the dogs. And she said she's allergic to certain dogs and tried to say
she's like, a dog rescuer.
How? You know, like
she's a terrible liar.
Awful. And I just was trying to say his dog has hair, and he's like, my dog doesn't. I don't really know dogs, but he's like, no, that's not even a problem. And she's like, okay, but most of the time, like with a lot of dogs, it happens like that. Like, girl.
But you love horses who have tons of hair. Oh. Okay.
You will say anything at this point.
I was just glad that Pastor Kyle was able to just see straight through her mess. Like, no, I've been watching what you've been up to.
Right.
Come on now.
Cut the excuses. And I guess it hurt her feelings because she's such a good person, and she's such a nice person and whatever. But I do like that Pastor Kyle let her talk for a bit. And then at a certain point, he was like, okay, hold on. Because like, and she was like, oh, like I had fun paddle boarding. I had fun with the tennis, which I don't know. We didn't get those vibes at all because you were at the tennis court acting like he was just like the devil's pawn or something like that. So yeah, so I think I like that Pastor Cal cut to the chase. And I like that Chris took control of the situation.
Yes.
Like, because remember at the beginning, I was like, oh, I think he's just going to go along with whatever. He's about to be like a rag doll. She's going to be dragging him all over the place. Chris is like, I'm grown. I'm not here for this. I can call a spade, and I can walk away. Today is decision day for me. Checkmate. Yeah. I loved it.
I think he kind of realized where things were going earlier than what he put on for us to see. And he was like, you know what? I'm in this contract. I'm already going to be on national TV, and I'm going to come out on top in this, even though there will be things that she's saying that are hurtful. And I'm going to end this on my terms. And I'm glad that he was like, nah, I'm good. Because it was almost like she really was expecting him to continue to go along with the mess.
Yeah.
She was big mad. I don't even think those tears were like tears of actually like, oh, my feelings were hurt. It's like, I'm big mad that you had the audacity to basically dump me.
She was embarrassed big time. That's what she was. And I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, I'm here for it. That's exactly how it should have ended. And he did it in a classy way. Nothing derogatory, didn't say anything bad. And I'm glad Pastor Kyle called out that Chris had actually good things to say about her.
Yeah.
She had egg on her face, and I was here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. She couldn't really come up with good things to say. She's like, yeah, but things just kept on happening, and they just kept on happening. Like, girl, ain't nothing happened. Like, nothing happened, Alyssa. You're making that up. We watched the show, girl. We saw you in HD or whatever it is. Acted out. And then the funny thing when she left her phone and he has to like hand it to her, she's like, I guess there's not much to say. He's like, yeah, there's nothing left. Like, girl, leave. But yeah, it really does. I'm glad that we don't have to see her anymore, because I think
it was too draining.
It was very draining seeing her. And like it's not like they carried the season. So like there are other good couples, there are other good things happening, interesting things happening with the other couples that we can talk about. So it's not like they were the only story that we had. So I'm glad that he ended it in a respectful way. And I really wish him the absolute best. I cannot wait for the reunion to see like what he's up to, what she has to say, if she even shows up. Like I'm really excited to see where they end up. So yeah. That was all that I had on everybody.
Yeah, that was it. That's all I have.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you guys tomorrow with our new podcast episode. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you guys next week for Married at First Sight. All right. Bye.
Bye.